Then Huntsville police released body camera or dash cam video of the chase that led to the arrest of 2 inmates who escaped from a New Orleans jail 2 weeks ago. Leo Tate and Jermaine Donald were taken into custody just yesterday. You can see there one of the men being pulled through a back passenger window.
Hello, how are you? My name is Larone Koonce, and I'm here to talk about the escape in New Orleans. I see that the city council has had a board meeting and they brought in the sheriff and she's trying to explain what happened. And I don't think that the city council members really have a good picture of what is supposed to happen. If you know what's supposed to happen and how a jail really operates, then you'll be able to see very clearly why this jail is not operating correctly. Okay, so I'm going to give you a picture of the way a jail is supposed to function, especially during these hours where these inmates escaped. Well, it's been reported that these inmates escaped around 1 o'clock. There's video of these inmates, 10 of them, running across the highway around 1 a.m. Okay, and then the sheriff and her deputy are testifying that the escape, the discovery of the escape was around 8:30, 8:45 in the morning. Okay, and they didn't notify the local police or anything like that. So I'm just going to try to give you a picture of what is supposed to happen in a jail on this shift, and then you're going to see how bad this jail is really run. Okay, say it's the midnight shift. The midnight tour starts at 11 p.m. in most jails, 11 p.m. to 8 or 7 in the morning, 11 to 7 tour, right? Simple. Now, usually at night, there's really nothing going on. The inmates are locked in their cells. The midnight tour is the easiest tour to run in a jail. If you're an administrator, it's much easier than the day tour. During the day, you have inmates going to court. You have the law libraries running, you have visits running, you have the clinic running, you have the yard and the gym running, you have social service, you have lawyers coming in to visit. You have a lot of things happening during the day. You have a lot of personnel there. You have a lot of noise. You have a lot of commotion. You might have fights. It's a lot of things. You have to feed these inmates. It's a lot going on during the day. You have a lot of staff there. And at night, it's a fraction of that. Midnight is the easiest shift to run, okay? All right, so let's say their tours start at 11 p.m. So the officer that's working 3 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, he's supposed to lock these inmates into their cells. The inmates supposed to be in their cells at 11 o'clock, okay? So when you see video of these inmates out at 12:30, shaking the door to try to open it, to get it open so they can go and escape or whatever they're trying to do, that is not supposed to happen. These inmates are supposed to be locked in 11 o'clock. If this tour starts at 11, if I'm the officer that comes in at 11 o'clock, inmates are already supposed to be locked in. 11 o'clock, I arrive at the facility, I get dressed, put on my uniform, I go to roll call. I get my assignment, I go to my post. Let's say I'm going to this cell block. Say if this is cell block B, for just some argument's sake, cell block B. And there's 50 inmates in cell block B. Let me turn my phone off. Right? Okay. After roll call, I go to cell block B. The officer's there. The inmates are locked in. They're waiting for it to get relieved, so I take over the midnight tour. I come into the housing area. I go. The officer greets me. I don't even ask him what my count is. Let's say there's 50 inmates in cells. I go, I make my count. I make sure the inmates are alive and make sure they're in their cells. I come back to the officer that I'm relieving and I tell him, I have 50. Is it 50? And if it's 50, he says, yeah, it's 50. He makes me sign a count slip that says how many inmates we have. I sign the count slip and he gives me the keys and I take over the post. Okay. Now, these 50 inmates are my responsibility. I have to make sure that they're not escaping and I got to make sure that they're alive. So my job during the 11 to 7 tour is to make sure that these inmates are there and they're breathing. Okay. So after I relieve the officer, I don't just go to sleep and put my feet up. No, my job is to make tours of that cell block every 30 minutes, at least. Maybe after you get comfortable with the inmates, you know them pretty well, you may not do that. But the rule says that you're supposed to do this, and you're supposed to make tours every 30 minutes. The reason why you do that, if you make your initial inspection of the cells and you see that there's no structural problems or anything just by visually looking in the cells, your concern is really not that the inmates are going to escape. Your concern during the midnight tour is the inmates may want to take their own lives. Okay, because this happens in a jail. Inmates do um, suffer from depression, and they do try to take themselves out. They try to take themselves out. So your job during the midnight tour is to make sure that doesn't happen. So you're constantly, every 30 minutes, 40 minutes or so, maybe even 20 minutes, you're coming through and you're looking in their cells. If they're asleep, fine. You just go back, sit back in your chair, and just maybe read your book and come back out another 30 minutes and you make your tour again. This is the job. This is the job. So when I hear that inmates are in a cell block and there's no officer there, and then at 12:30 they're trying to open cells, that makes no sense to a correction officer. Okay? Now, just say there's no officer there. All right, like they're saying. And then you have inmates trying to open cells, like we see in the video. He's shaking his cell. Now remember, these cell blocks are just concrete and steel. The ceilings are high. Every sound echoes. On the midnight tour, when the inmates are locked in, you should be able to hear a pin drop. You know, it's supposed to be that quiet. At 12:30, if somebody's banging a steel door and trying to open it, you know how loud that is? You know how far that sound will travel? If there's an officer in the housing area like they're supposed to be, soon as they start doing that, the officer is going to be like, what the heck is going on? He's going to go down there and see what's going on. If I'm in the housing area next door, if I'm in the cell block next door, I'm going to hear that noise. And I'm going to get on the phone and call that housing area and say, what the heck is going on? Or I'm going to come out into the corridor and bang on their door and say, what's happening in there? So this didn't happen. Inmates are out there shaking metal doors, ripping the doors open, and nobody hears this. This is unheard of. Okay? Now, in a facility, if you come in at 11 o'clock, they start sending you to lunch or meal. It's not lunch because you're coming in at 11 p.m. and you're there in the middle of the night. So maybe about 2:30, 3 o'clock, you'll start getting meal release. People will be coming around to relieve you to go to meal. When somebody comes, say at 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody will knock on your door to relieve you to go to meal. Right? When they come in to relieve you, they don't just say, hey, give me your keys and go to meal. No, they come in and they do a count because they have to make sure that these inmates are alive and well and nobody, has done anything to themselves. So it's their responsibility to take account. So I stand there, they go take the count. They come back and tell me they have 50 inmates. I say, yeah, that's the count. Take the keys. I give them the keys. I go to lunch or a meal for 30 minutes. I come back 3:30. When I come back at 3:30, I don't take it for granted that all the inmates are fine. When I come back, I don't know what happened in the last half hour when I wasn't there. So I'm going to take a count. I'm going to take my own count. When I get back from meal at 3:30 and I count 50 and all the inmates are still alive, then I say, okay, give me the keys. I got this. See you later. And the officer that relieved me goes and relieves someone else. So from 11 o'clock, when I come in, 11:20, when I take that post and I sign off on that count slip goes to the control room. That's the institutional count. That's one count. 3 o'clock when I get relieved, the officer that relieves me takes a count. That's two counts. When I come back at 3:30, that's 3 counts already on the midnight tour. At 4 o'clock, there's an institutional count. So every housing area in that facility is supposed to submit a count slip. And that count slip is supposed to go to control room. The control room tallies all the housing areas, and that number that they come up with is supposed to equal the total count of that facility. So if the total count is 500, they're supposed to add up all the count slips, the totals in those count slips, and that's supposed to equal 500. That's how you know your total count, because all the inmates have been accounted for at 4 o'clock in the morning. At 7, when I get ready to get relieved, the officer comes in. He makes a count, makes sure everybody's alive and well, signs off on the count slip, and I go home. So in the course of a night, you're going to have several counts, and you're going to be doing your inspections every 30 minutes. So inmates are not supposed to be missing. Inmates are not supposed to be outside of their cells trying to rip the cells open, because you're not supposed to have inmates walking around at night. That's dangerous. So you have 2 dangers here. Not only, well, 3 really, for the inmates to escape because nobody's watching them. Number 2, you have the risk of inmates taking themselves out by, because nobody's watching them. And then if the cells are open, you have the risk of an inmate going into another inmate's cell, shaking him up and leaving him there for the morning. So when the 7 o'clock officer comes in, he sees a guy laying in the bed and he's dead. You don't want that. So you can't have the cells open like this with no officer around. There's too much that can go wrong. So if you have officers that are doing the standard practices, this is not supposed to happen. If inmates are escaping, you're supposed to know that at the 4 o'clock point when you do an institutional count, if not earlier, when you're doing the meal release. It's not supposed to happen like this. And they said that they didn't know that the inmates were gone until like 8:45 that morning. So from 1 o'clock when they left to 8:45, no one did a count. No one came and looked at anything. And then they're saying that when they realized that the count was off, instead of calling the local police, the New Orleans Police Department, and saying, hey, we had escape, send the crew out, be on the lookout. They're saying, no, we couldn't do that because we didn't know that we had a breach of the prison, of the jail. We didn't know we had a breach.
It was not immediately clear that an external breach had occurred.
How could you not know you have a breach if you looked into the cell and you saw the toilet sink fixture removed from the wall and the big gaping hole in the cell? Anybody who comes into that housing area and looks in that cell, they see that big hole. You know you haven't escaped. You know you haven't escaped. Right then and there, you may not know who escaped, but you know you've had an escape, because all you have to do is count that the inmates in that housing area. And if you're supposed to have 50 and you have 40, you know that you haven't escaped. You may not know who they are because you got 50 inmates in there. So you make your call then and say, and you alert everybody, you alert your institution, you alert whatever squad absconding unit that you have, you activate that. If you have some sort of special response team, you activate them. You sound the alarm, you notify the local police, and you notify whatever federal task force that you have in place, and you let them know we had to escape. We're going to get more information once we identify the inmates, but be on the lookout for these inmates. This didn't happen. The superintendent of the police department in New Orleans heard it from someone else that something was happening at the jail. So she called the sheriff and said, I'm hearing things that something is happening. And the sheriff is like, oh, yeah, well, we had to escape.
NOPD Superintendent Kirkpatrick says she found out about the jailbreak after one of her captains heard the news at the State Fusion Center. That's where information is shared across jurisdictions. Kirkpatrick says she immediately called the sheriff.
She took my call, confirmed, and we just said, okay, well, we want to get this going, and we're here to help.
I appreciate that she took your call, but I also am a little concerned that you didn't get a call.
That was supposed to be the first call you made to the local police and let them know. Okay? It's not supposed to be like this. It's not. This is disturbing to me and anybody who's in this business. Okay? It's not supposed to be like that. When you have an escape, you have to go back to the count. Now, what I think happened here is that they were in denial. They found out that they had escaped, and they felt that, first of all, they are in denial thinking that these inmates are gone. Even though there's a big hole in the wall and they're down 10 inmates, the count is off by 10. They don't believe it. So they're going to check the whole facility first to make sure these inmates are not in the facility.
At that time, we didn't know exactly who we were searching for or the number. That's why we didn't want to put any information out further than the institution, because we had to canvass the entire facility to see who was missing.
As if they broke out of their cell block and they're just hiding in the facility. No. Obviously, no one's manning the cameras because you have video footage of them running off the loading dock and across the highway. So nobody's on the cameras all night to see that happening. They need to have some sort of alarm system, some sort of perimeter alarm, where if the inmates, anybody crosses that perimeter, there's going to be an alert somewhere. I mean, if you have a Ring camera in your house, you know what I'm saying, at your house, you know if somebody passes in front of that camera, you get an alert. That's how a jail is supposed to run. If you have inmates running off the facility out into the street, you're supposed to already know that. This is not a lack of equipment. You have the technology there. You have the cameras. You're just not doing the job. Evidently, what happens on the midnight tour there, everybody gets a pillow and everybody goes to sleep, and nobody's watching the inmates. The sheriff is saying we need $5.5 million to fix the locks in this facility.
You said you've been asking for money for a long time. How much money do you need at this point?
The locks alone, I believe, are
5.2 million.
yeah, just the locks. I mean, you two, 5.2 million.
The reason why you need $5.5 million to fix the locks in the facility is because you are allowing the inmates to destroy the locks. Simple as that. They are breaking these doors open whenever they feel like, and they're coming out of their cells whenever they feel like it. So you can put another $5 million worth of locks in them in the facility, but they're going to just break these locks too. You're just throwing money away if you don't have a standard procedure. So when the inmates escape, okay, the inmates are gone. You do your count, and it's easy to find out when inmates are gone on the midnight tour because everybody's supposed to be locked in. And you're not supposed to lock inmates out until the count clears, meaning that they have confirmed from all the count slips that came that there's no inmates missing. Then the count clears, and then you let inmates out. So on the midnight tour, if the count doesn't clear, no inmates go anywhere. So the people who haven't lost the inmate, they just confirm what they already have. Do a recount. Okay, I got 50 here. I got 70 here. And then they send that information to the control room. They tally it up and say, okay, this particular housing area, cell block B, is short 10 inmates. You make your notifications right there. What is supposed to happen, you're supposed to find out. First, you tell the local law enforcement that you had a escape. Inmates are wearing orange. They're wearing jail clothes. So if you see somebody, you know, he's one of ours. Simple as that. They didn't do that. I don't think the New Orleans police found out till like 10 o'clock that these guys were gone. That's negligence. That's incompetence. That's not how you run a facility. What happens? Inmates are missing. You let them know they're missing. And then how do you find out which inmates are missing? Simple. What we call pedigree the inmates. Okay? Every housing area has locator cards. You have a card for every inmate that's in that housing area. So in this scenario, if I have 50 inmates in my housing area, if I was assigned 50 inmates, that means I have 50 cards. The card has the inmate's picture, has his name, has his height, his weight, his race, the color of his hair, the color of his eyes, his birth date, his next of kin, his religious affiliation on that locator card, right? So I have 50 of those cards. So if my area is missing 10 inmates, now I got to figure out which 10 are missing. What I do, I take the 40 and tell them, hey, fellas, go into the day room. The 40, go into the day room. I stand at the door with my locator cards. I got 50 cards. I start calling names. James Johnson, step up. He comes out. I ask him, what's your date of birth? What's your mom's name? Okay, I'm looking at the pictures. My guy, okay, go to your cell. I do this 40 times. Now I know who's here. So the 10 cards that I have, these are the ones that escaped. It's simple. We go to movement control. We pull their securing orders. We get all the information about them. We find out who it is. We already know who it is. What are their charges? And then we find out the addresses. We turn this information over to the unit that's looking for these guys. So now we know where to look for them. We know their addresses, where they live, where they're from. This is where we go to look for them because usually they're going home. They don't have any money. They don't have any clothes. They're going to their, familiar surroundings to try to get help. So we're there. We're waiting for them, right? Now, what they do while you give them that information, now you pull the visit logs. Everybody who comes to visit inmates, they have to have ID. That information is logged. Some facilities have computer systems. We log the information of the visitors. What's their name? Where do they live? What is their relationship to the inmate? So when he escapes, we have that. So we give that to the unit that's looking for him. Okay, he's got a girlfriend that came to visit him. He's got kids. He's got a mother. His uncle came. His aunt came. We know exactly where you're probably going to be to try to get help. So that is supposed to happen quickly after you figure out you haven't escaped. If inmates escaped at 1 o'clock in the morning, at the latest, if the officers just sleep, if he came in at 11:30, 11:20, made his count and fell asleep, and everybody left, when he gets relieved to go to meal, the officer comes in and does a count at 3 o'clock, you're supposed to know. The alarm sounds right then. 10 inmates are gone. Looks in the cell. There's a big gaping hole there. It's on. Go do the escape protocol right now. Get these guys back here. Simple. For it to go from 1 a.m. to 8:45 before they discover that these guys are gone, and then to go for another hour and a half before they make the proper notifications, that's incompetence. That's total incompetence. You don't need an inside job if you got this type of jail. You're not doing any security. And see, the thing about it, which really troubles me, is that when you look at the way this compound is set up, this compound, it has the sheriff's office is attached to the jail, which is unique, and it is very conducive to having a really tight run ship, because you have the person who's ultimately in charge has an office right there in the complex. When I was working on Rikers Island in New York, Rikers Island is in East Elmhurst, Queens. The chief of the department's office is in Lower Manhattan. It's all the way in another borough, all the way across the water. Okay? So for Rikers Island to have their chief that far away, you can understand that maybe it's not running the way the chief wants it to run all the time, right? Even though when I was working on Rikers, it runs better than a New Orleans jail from what I see. When I was working on Rikers, we had 15,000 inmates in the system. The jail that I worked in, C95, had 3,000 inmates. We didn't have these problems. Our concerns were inmates hanging up on the midnight. Weren't escaping. Okay? We weren't worried about inmates getting shanked up in the middle of the night because we were on the job. You have the sheriff, who is pretty much the warden of this facility, who's supposed to be in charge of this facility, has an office right in the complex. This jail is supposed to run like a Swiss watch because you don't know when the sheriff is going to come and make a tour. She could come in the middle of the night, just knocks on the door, comes in, tells the officer, grab a set of keys, we're making a tour, and catch everybody sleeping, everybody not on point. No. The sheriff has an office right here. Why is this running like this? This is running like this because either the sheriff doesn't know what she's doing or she doesn't care. As simple as that. And to say that it's because the locks are broke, no. It doesn't matter if the locks are broke. You know, I say this like in a way that officers would understand. On the midnight tour, now sometimes you work in a cell area and the locks, sometimes they are not as secure as you want them. Sometimes the inmates can jimmy the door and open the door in a cell block. On the midnight tour, inmates go in their cell. I don't care whether the cell door locks or not. You go in your cell and you're closing that door. And you're not opening it up until the morning at 7 o'clock when it's lockout time. And they know that. So if you're on your game, if you're on point, so just because the cell doors doesn't lock doesn't mean you don't go in your cell and close the door. Simple as that. So if you got inmates running around at 12:30 at night, this jail is not running professionally. This is a joke. It's a game, you know? And now they're trying to run a game on the city council because the city council doesn't know. They're like, oh, well, maybe we need to give her $5.5 million to fix the locks. And maybe we need to give her $13,000 to fix the plumbing or whatever. If inmates are pulling the plumbing apart, no, it's not going to work. If inmates are pulling fixtures off the wall, yeah, you're going to have plumbing problems. You know, of course you have to have maintenance in the facility, yes, but it's not supposed to be maintenance because the inmates are destroying everything right under your nose. They had a guy that I saw a video of him. He said that he retired as a maintenance worker in the facility last year. And he said inmates were into the electrical system and tampering with the electricity.
You know, we had a lot of electrical issues. They was housing inmates in the interview room. The voltage that was in there was 277. We had inmates, they was tampering with the electrical that was in the interview room.
I'm like, how is that happening if officers are on their job? If the leadership in the jail are making sure that we have control. This jail was out of control. No one's controlling this thing. This is why you can't retain officers. This is why officers leave, because a jail that's not under control is dangerous, not only for the inmates, but for the officers and anybody who works there too. There's no control. You can't recruit people to work in a dysfunctional system. An officer can take those skills, could work there for a year or 2 or 3, and take those skills and go anywhere in the country and make more money in safer conditions. Why would they want to work there? Okay, so the whole retention thing is based on whether or not you have a true functioning facility where you're going by the minimum standards and you're doing the job correctly. If you have a housing area with the cell doors that don't lock, all the more reason why you need an officer in the housing area. How about if an inmate comes out of one cell and stabs some other inmate in the middle of the night? What are you going to do? Just let him bleed to death and then find out 8:30 in the morning that he got stabbed 1 o'clock in the morning? No. You're supposed to be on point, on your job. Simple as that. Like I said, the midnight tour is the easiest tour to run. If you can't run a midnight tour, then you need to get out of the business if you're an administrator. And it's bad for the taxpayers of New Orleans. They're being cheated. They're spending money to run a facility, and it's not being run. Now she's asking for $13 million. I think the taxpayers should say, and the city council that represents the people should say, we're not giving you any more money. Maybe until you resign. Then we'll start all over with a new crew, with a new group of administrators that may know what they're doing. But you have messed up to the point where we don't have faith in giving you $13 million or $5 million or $500. They're saying that this whole escape is costing them $200,000 a week looking for these inmates.
This is we're hearing about how much it actually costs the city of New Orleans to maintain this ongoing search for the 2 remaining escapees. Sources tell WDSU it's costing more than $200,000 a week. That cost including covering overtime for more than 200 OPSO and NOPD officials working extended shifts.
Then they have rewards being offered. Now they're looking for the last 2, and they're offering $50,000 each for these inmates. You know how much money that is costing? That's costing the taxpayer of New Orleans. And what are they getting for their money? They're getting officers that don't even make patrols, that don't even do security inspections. There's nobody manning the cameras. There's nobody making sure these inmates are not hanging up, making sure that the inmates are not stabbing each other, letting the inmates rip the locks off the doors, banging in the middle of the night, and nobody responds. Nobody hears that. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You know, so this is my issue that I have with this system and the people that are administrators of this system. Hopefully, the people that oversee the funding of this will reach out to somebody who actually knows something about corrections and get them to weigh in on this, because it seems like they're not asking the right questions. I mean, they may not know what questions to ask, but this needs to be corrected for the taxpayer who's spending the money and for the safety of the community. I mean, how can you sleep well at night knowing that this is going on, you know, in the facility where you have your worst inmates locked up in? You know, it's not fair. It's not fair. So, you know, I'm going to talk about this some more, but thanks for stopping by and checking me out as always. Until next time, like the video, subscribe, and until next time, as always, peace and stay safe.